Hey, so in this video I'm going to try to explain what dead elements are in the game Infinibrowser. I'm going to do it in one take because I don't have an editing software, and so I'm going to try to be as concise, precise, and fast as possible. This should be a short video, hopefully. So, Infinibrowser is a game all about combining elements. If you take an element and you add it with something else, you get a new item. Now, when an item reacts with something and creates a new word, we call these items that you used for the craft alive. So water is an alive element, thank God. Um, but some items that you're gonna encounter will not combine with anything. Whatever you try to do, whatever you try to combine it with, it will not work. Why? Well, there's two reasons for that. There's two potential reasons. There's a third one, but I'm not going to talk about it because this is currently getting talked about in some very techy and nerdy spaces in the Discord. If that's your kind of jam, just join and ask about zombie elements. I'm good. I'll just fill you in. But essentially, the first case that you will encounter the most if you're playing the game casually and just making like random gibberish and nonsense, which is really fun when you start, is the character limits failsafe. So if an item is above 30 characters, it will not combine with anything. So here you can see I have very long elements, and whatever I try to put with it, it simply doesn't work. Whatever I try to put with this, it just doesn't do anything because it's above 30 characters. So that's the first failsafe. If an item is longer than 30 characters, it's dead. You cannot do anything with it. Get over it. The second case scenario, it takes a little bit more explaining, but it's also pretty straightforward once you get it. It's just kind of like annoying to explain to someone who doesn't ever do programming or doesn't know about it. So if you are into programming or into computers or whatever, you might know about title case. Title case is essentially a rule where a word, a string of letters, must have its first letter capitalized, and then every character after a space must be capitalized, and no other character must be capitalized. No other. So here you can see that I have Mid-Autumn Festival. Now I have the first character, mid, that's alright, it's capitalized. And I have the word festival after a space, it's also capitalized. So it should work. No, it doesn't work. Why? Because there's this little hyphen between mid and autumn, and there's a capital A after it. This means that there's no space before this A, therefore it should be lowercase. And since it does not satisfy title case, it's dead. You cannot do anything with it. Same for this one. This one is actually quite interesting because you see it starts with a lowercase a, but right before it you have quotation marks. Now, title case checks for the first character, not the first letter. So here it checks for the quotation mark. And it's like, oh, well, quotation marks don't have a capitalized version. So this is fine, I'll accept that. So elements in quotation marks, for instance, that start with a lowercase, work perfectly fine. But this one will break. Why? Because there's a lowercase W right after the space. Now, there is something very fundamental and important to understand about dead elements. You can see something quite silly. I have the item by here, which is all uppercase, so this should be dead, right? But if I put it with something, you see, wow, it did something. How's that possible? It does not respect the rules. Well, the way the game works is that when you make a craft, you put it with something. And you have the little prompt here on the side. So what it does is that it sends this first part. You can see on the bottom right, by the way, that's what I'm showing. You can see that it shows. Actually, can I zoom in? Whatever. So it sends in to the server the recipe antonym plus by. Then what the game does, as we think it does, is that it checks if the items that you used satisfy all the failsafe. And to no first, what it does, the game converts the elements that you're using to title case. So when I send by plus synonym here, what the server and the game receives is actually by in title case plus synonym in title case, which is already the case. So let's say I use Mid-Autumn Festival here. When I send in Mid-Autumn Festival to the server, it will convert it to Mid-Autumn Festival with the lowercase a, and it will try to craft. But it will see that the item you're trying to craft, which is not Mid-Autumn Festival with a capital A, but with a lowercase a, which is the correctly capitalized one, does not exist. It's not in the game. So you're using an item that does not exist, and therefore it simply sends back nothing by default. Now, let's say I use the word by, which is a very common word in the English language, but it's not capitalized properly. I send in the craft by plus thesaurus. It gets converted to by correctly capitalized, and thesaurus correctly capitalized. It checks in the database if the item exists, and it does, because someone made it. Because someone made by, right here, with this recipe. So, how does that help us? Well, you see, since it gets converted to an actual item that exists, the game is perfectly fine by that, and so it gives you back your cherished results. What this means is, if someone were to make Mid-Autumn Festival with a lowercase a on another save file, this one would suddenly, out of nowhere, start working again. It would work. Now, there is a very important rule that you must know about capitalization variance that got changed very recently, I learned, and for the better, for the much better. It's a very good news for enthusiasts of what we call the encoded alphabet. I'm not going to go over it. It's something really, really powerful that allows you to do essentially anything you want with the game. Create anything you may imagine that, of course, satisfies the rules. You can even go beyond, but like whatever. But before, what the thing is, if let's say I have the letter I here in uppercase. Now you can also see that I have lowercase I. But let's ignore that I have this one. Let's ignore I have lowercase I. What would happen if I made uppercase I and then I used the recipe to lowercase I, which happens to be imaginary plus number? So I do the combination, imaginary plus number, and I get capital I. What is up with that? Well, if you have um, if you have a certain capitalization of a word, vanilla, if you're in vanilla, you cannot unlock a capitalization variant. So here, if I did the recipe for by, which is government, plus of, if I were in vanilla, I could not get by. But here it actually gives me the item by, but I unlocked it. This is just because of how the mod works. It gives you the elements that has the correct capitalization if you make it successfully. Now before, this was an issue because you would not actually receive the item correctly capitalized into your inventory. So let's say you make an item that is broken, like I don't know, I'm not gonna find one, but let's say you get one that is not capitalized properly for some obscure reason, like you get this, for instance. If you found a way to make this, which is the correct way to fix, and that would fix this element, it will not work because you would make the craft. You can see in the console here that the reply is actually the correctly capitalized version, but this item never goes in your inventory, so it's never actually discovered. And so you cannot revive it yourself. You have to ask someone else on a different save file or use yourself a different save file in order to fix it. But now you can actually fix them yourself. You can actually make that recipe not receive the correctly capitalized version of the item. And since this one, when I use it, gets changed when it's checking if the element exists or not into this, since it does that, and the item exists even though I don't have it, it will work perfectly fine. Easy as that. Also, that's really funny. You can see that I had I here, so it gave me this. But when I did a underscore plus I, it gave me AI in all caps. But it gave me this back because I already had it. But you can see that now, since I have the mod, I have this element as well, which is pretty cool. So this is how you can revive an element. Find a different, like for example, for people, this is really an advanced tip. Only people who are on Discord and like use encoded elements will know what I'm talking about. But let's say you try to encode something like I don't know, dog row Unicode here that I created to try to make dog row Unicode, which I did. I failed because dog is a word in itself, but whatever. Let's say that I get dog row Unicode in lowercase. Like I do something with it that gives me dog row Unicode all in lowercase. I can just try another item, like imagine that delete hyphen. No, delete the hyphen. Imagine that delete the hyphen gives me not a correctly capitalized version. Oh, there we go. Okay, sure. Nice. So let's say this happens and it's not capitalized properly. I can just try with the different elements that typically get rid of the hashtag, like with spacing, which didn't work this time. And bam, I suddenly get the correctly capitalized version, and the lowercase version is fixed, even though I have not received the one correctly capitalized. I've done this multiple times. For instance, since I have the mod both appear. But I did this earlier. I think it was a transliterator? Hangul transl... No, what was it? I forgot. Fuck. I forgot. Was it? Oh, right in Hangul. I did this earlier, and you can see that I have two variations, and I fixed it myself, so this one would not be dead because I got this one the first time. So yeah, that's about all you need to know about dead elements. I'll make a separate video about zombie elements because this one is currently getting a lot of news and new knowledge thanks to Square, Glowy, and some other people in the Discord who made some very curious findings about like how the game handles them, and that gave us some clues about like where they come from. But I'll make a separate video about that. So that's about it for dead elements. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it was clear enough. Hopefully I forgot nothing. That would be like insane. And I'll see you guys in another video. See you. Bye bye.